Hey, welcome back. We're now going to handle exactly what the user sees when the game is over. Currently, when we cycle through all of our images and we get to the very last one, we are currently stopping our timer and also we're not generating any more images. During the game started and game ended condition, we also need to show and hide various elements on the screen. And also at the very end, we need to display a message to the user with their total score. So first of all, we're going to get to work inside of this play function, and we're going to begin by hiding some elements which we don't want to see when the game is running. For example, if we click on play, we don't want to see all of this welcome section, we don't need to see the play button, we just need to see the stats area and also the image. This is because inside of our index.html, we have this image area. And once the game is in play, we only want to display this image container. So we're going to hide our message area, we're going to hide our start screen, we're also going to hide the play button since the game is already in play, and we're going to take care of all of this over in our play function. And this function is called as soon as our game starts, so this is a good place to hide all of our content. So first of all, we're going to select the message area with getElementById. And we're going to use JavaScript to set the style and set the display property to be equal to none. So this is just the same as adding the display type in our style sheets, but this has been added dynamically with JavaScript. We're also going to copy this and paste this in 2 more times, and we can use this second one inside of our index page to grab our start screen section, which contains all of the text. So number 2 is the start screen. And then finally, we also need to remove the play button once the game has started. So this is the ID of play button. And let's check this is all working. So once we click play, we no longer see all of our text at the top. We no longer see the start screen. We no longer see the play button. And we've also hidden the message area for later too. So this is handling the condition when the game has started, and we also need to handle what happens when it's the end of the game. For this, we're also going to create a custom function which we'll call right at the very end. So a constant, and this function is going to be called end of game. And this section also wants to show and hide some areas. So once we've reached the end of the game, we want to make sure that our message has been displayed because we're going to add a message to the user with their score. So let's copy this and paste in the message section. And to make this visible on the screen, we can change the display type to be block. The second one we're going to amend is going to be our image container. This is because once the game is over, we want to remove the last image from our screen, and we can do this by keeping this display type to be equal to none. So once we remove this image, we then want to populate our message with the user score. So if we go right up to the very top where we created our variables, we have the user score inside of this variable. We also need to create a second variable too, which is the total of points available. This is going to be equal to the number of images inside of our array. So we can create a variable just below, separated by a comma. I'm going to call this the total available, and set this equal to the length of our images with images.length. We can now use these 2 variables to display a message to the user at the end of our game. So back to our end of game function. Let's grab our message area with document.getElementById, the ID of message, and then we can set the message with inner.html, and we're going to set this equal to a template string. So we add the backticks so we can include our 2 variables. The message I'm going to display is going to be game over. Your score was. We can then use the $ symbol and the curly braces to output our score variable, a /, and then we make use of our total available variable, which we just created above. So this is going to display our message to the user. So let's reduce down our timer. Let's go for 300 milliseconds and check this is all working. Click on play. And the score doesn't really matter. So we get to the end of the game and nothing happens. This is because we have created our end of game function, but we have not yet called it. And the place we want to call this function is up inside of our generate function. This is the same location inside the if statement, where we're checking if our image's length is equal to 0, and then we are stopping our timer. Inside here is also the same place we can call our end of game function. So let's add this, and then cycle back through our images. Okay, so our end of game function has now been called. We've removed the image container, and then set the message to the user with the total score. So this is good, this is all working, but what do we want to do now? Well, we have a couple of options. We can add our play button back into the screen, which is going to take us back to the start of the game. Or we can simply do something like setting this message to be 3 seconds, and then reloading the browser to take the user back to the start screen. The way we can do this is by using a timeout. So here we used the set interval, which is going to call a function after a certain time delay. Set interval will also keep repeating this until we tell it otherwise. However, inside of here, we only want to run a function or some code only once. To do this, we can use set timeout. Inside of here, we're also going to pass in a arrow function. Inside of here, all we want to do is to refresh the browser. And the way we can do this inside of our code is by using location.reload. This is exactly the same as pressing the reload button on our browser, but instead we're doing this after a time delay, which I'm going to set as 3 seconds. Let's try this out. Click on play. There's our score, and after 3 seconds we should see a reload. While we're also dealing with the end of the game condition, we can also hide this stat section on the left. So we can hide this at the end of the game and then reinstate this once the game has started. So the way we can do this is just like we've done above with get element by ID, and the ID we want to grab. If we scroll up to our stats section, remember when we used the CSS earlier on, we surrounded all of this text content inside of a div with the ID of stats content. We can now use this to show and hide this area in the script. So first of all, let's copy and paste this line. We need to select our stats content. And then at the end of the game, we're going to remove this with display of none. We can grab this. And then once the game has started, we want to reinstate this by setting this to be a display type of block. Let's cycle through our images and check this is all working in the browser. So when the game has started, we see our section is appearing. And then this disappears at the end of the game. And in fact, we probably don't even need to reinstate this when the game starts, because remember, we are refreshing the browser, which will immediately place this back into the DOM. Let's cycle through. Our stats are all displaying. And they are removed again at the end of the game. So with this now taken care of, in the upcoming video, we're going to handle these 2 buttons here, and make sure the user can only have one selection each time an image is displayed.